In this video I'm going to recreate something like this, focusing on how the water is done and how we put the image together. So I'm going to focus on the water first. I'm going to take our default cube into edit mode with tab, just screen keys down here, select that top face, hit Shift D to duplicate along the Z axis, just bring it up a bit. And then I'm going to press, so at the moment both of these two objects are treated as the same object. I want to separate them, so in edit mode I'm just going to select that top face that I duplicated, hit P and separate by selection. That just means now these are two separate objects, so back in my object mode I can move around separately. So the rain effect is built using a particle system and physics. So the physics for this is going to be the water surface. So we're going to use dynamic paint physics. So physics tab, dynamic paint with this top face selected. It's a canvas type, meaning it will accept marks from brushes, and then we add the canvas. This controls the length of the simulation calculation. I'll leave it at 250 for now. And then for the surface here, we're going to choose waves, meaning that the surface will deform with wave patterns when it gets hit by paint, essentially. That's pretty much it. So then we're probably going to need this subdivided a bunch of times as well, but before we do that I'll add the particle system. So I'm actually going to duplicate this again, this top face. I'm in object mode now, on Z, and then I'll delete this dynamic paint off this one. So this one is our dynamic paint activated, this one's going to be the particle system. So I also need a raindrop, so I'm just going to, for now, add a icosphere, just one subdivision, very simple. I'll just move that down so we can see it. And then I'll right click on that, shade smooth, so that will actually, it's way too big, but that will be the raindrop. So then here, I want to go to the Particles tab with this selected, create a particle system. And straight away if I hit play you can see that particles are being generated. That'll be the rain. So under render we want to render as an object. So these are one of the particles. Each particle will be an object. Which object is it? We want the icosphere. So now, same thing, but each of these particles is a copy of the object that I created. Then I can fiddle with the scale if I want them bigger or smaller. So I'll probably put them about there. And then a bit of randomization in the scale as well. Okay, so we've got our particle system happening. Now we're going to select our, so particle system happening, we're going to go to the physics tab and dynamic paint. This time we want brush. So that's for this particle system, we've got selected, we're going to create a brush, add the brush. What is the brush? It is particle system. Which particle system? It's the one we created earlier, this one here. And then I've just subdivided this plane as well. I'm going to subdivide it again. Maybe 2 more times. So fairly dense, let's go with 3. Don't want to go too dense, but that should be okay. And now if we play the simulation, can see that the particles are distorting the surface. And then it's just a matter of playing with the settings of the both the canvas and the particle brush until it gives you what you want. So at the moment it's a bit too strong. The other thing I'll do is I'll right click on this and shade smooth. So let's have a look at the settings here. So damping, if I turn the damping, let's say 0.8, this should make the object less able to be bent, but that's probably actually not what we want, but check it anyway. So back to the start. Yep. So you can see the effect that's having. It's not quite what I need right now. So it really depends how strong you want the effect, but for me, these are the settings that have given me a fairly subtle rain. These are the settings that have worked for me, so I'm simulating for 250 frames in length, and then I had to bring the radius here down, and then a few things here I changed. I lifted the speed to 2, just seems to be a bit closer to what I need. So you can play with those, and then the other thing would be the particle system to control when the particles, how many particles there are. Seed is just like a random value to make it random each time. They start and end, so I've got this, the particles start falling at frame 1 and stop falling at frame 200. The particles last for 50 frames before they just die, essentially, disappear. And then, so yeah, I haven't really changed anything. I don't think I need to for now. It's giving me what I need. So the last thing I'd like to do is on this object, just select the edges. So that's holding down Alt and then clicking on the outermost edge. And you can double click. It's given me all 4 edges, and I'm just going to go down along the Z-axis. I don't really want this to change much, so I'm not going to do lots of subdivisions, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. I'm just going to go down 1, so just 1 extra row, just to about there. And then that just gives the water a bit of depth. So the plants, if you look on Blender Market for the plant library, this is free. You can download these plants, and then in Blender, unzip the file, and then in your preferences, you can, in file paths, specify the path to the plant library that we've got off Blender Market, and that just means that I can now go to the asset browser, and these plants come in. So let's bring in a fern. So I want to move this plant. So I want to move this plant here. I know it's correct on the Z-axis though, so I'm going to pick G to grab. And then I'm going to hit Shift Z, so it means I can just grab the plant on every axis except Z. Now the rain effects on the plant are similar, so in the Physics tab I'm adding Dynamic Paint. It'll be a canvas, it will be a wave type, and then same thing again. So this time I wanted more damping, so let's try 0.7, just see how that looks. I'll swap this back to my dope sheet. Oops. Okay, so you can see way too strong. The raindrops are completely ruining the plant. So I'll just fiddle with the settings till I find what works. So it might still be a bit too strong, but you can see the effect there. So the water drops are now, when they hit the plant, they just deform the plant a bit. which is helpful. The other thing I did is to add a wave modifier. I won't do it now, but you can just add a little bit of default motion to the plant, like it's been blowing in a breeze or whatever. And then the rock. So for the rock, to get the water effects on the rock, I took this into edit mode and I just grabbed this main rock piece. So I've got the mouse sitting over the main rock. I'm going to hit L on the keyboard. Selects just that main rock island. And then I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it. See, I've now got a copy, but I'm now going to hit Escape so it doesn't move anywhere. So I've essentially got two rocks sitting on top of each other right now. I'm going to hit P to bring up the separate menu, separate by selection. So now I've got the complicated rock with all the extra bits, and then I've got the simple rock, which is this one here, and I'm going to move it along the Z-axis just to bring it up a little bit, like so, and this will be the canvas, what we create the canvas from. So just like the water surface, it's going to need some geometry. Let's have a look. It's not terribly detailed, but it should be enough. In fact, I know it's enough because I've done it before. So now we need to go to physics again, dynamic paint, canvas, add canvas, waves, and essentially we do the same thing. So what we will be doing is shading this to look like water, and then when the water drops hit it, the water line essentially moves below the rock, but the effect that it has is like the water has hit the rock and it's quickly flowing down. I don't know why it works, I just know that it does. I discovered it by mistake, but it works great. So let's just have a look at that. I'm just going to go into my my view options here, this down arrow here, and change the colour of the objects to be random. Just make it a bit easier to see if the effect's working. Once again, way too strong, so we want bring up the damping, bring down the scale influence. It's going too low now. Effect. Let's try 0.5, 0.4. Not springing back fast enough, so I'll bring this up to say 0.6. Still not springing back, might need to bring the damping down, and bring up to, let's try 0.8. Too strong of an effect. That'll probably do for now. I don't think it's quite as good as I had before on the other file, but you can see that just getting this effect that water is hitting the top of that rock and displacing the water, and the effect will be strengthened when we shade. Do our shading. Okay, so the water, because water is see-through, a lot of the appearance of the water is determined by the appearance of everything else in the scene, so we'll do the water last. The assets that we've brought in of the plant and the rock are pre-textured, so we just need to get the soil cue right and get our lighting right. So in the viewpoint shading here, you can see we've got the wireframe, the solid colour. Then we get the EV preview of our materials, which starts to look a bit more closer to the end result. But for the best render quality, we want to use cycles. If I go to my final tab here, this goes to the rendered view, which uses the same render settings as the rest of my scene. And then under the render settings here, I want to change the render engine to cycles, and we'll get a nicer result. So I can still jump back here to get an EV preview, but cycles render will be here. And I can see there's a light that we don't need because we're going to use a HDRI to light the scene, which is just a quicker way to add realistic lighting. So under the World tab here, we go to the surface background, we change this to an environment texture, and we load up an HDRI. Mossy Forest. Any HDRI will work to get started. You can download heaps off the internet. And then we want to hide these so that that's working, it's lighting our scene, but I don't want to see it in the background, so we go to the render tab, and down under film we tick transparent, so it just makes the image transparent. Okay, so back with the cube selected, I'm going to create a new material, call it, so actually I want to put two materials on this cube, so cube material, we'll have the dirt material, and then we'll have the, I guess, like the pond floor. Okay, and then it's a matter of getting our materials and mapping them to this cube. So if you go to this website, freepbr.com, and you want to download a dirt material and a pond floor material. So for a pond floor, I'm using it like a, you'll see it when we do it, but any two materials. Alright, so I've got the dirt slot selected, and then I'm going to go to my principal BSDF and hit Control-T to bring up, to add 3 nodes that maps an image onto the base color. If Control-T doesn't work, just make sure that you've got Node Wrangler installed. So under your add-ons in Edit Preferences, go Node Wrangler. Just makes it quicker to do this process. Okay, so we're using the UV coordinates of the cube, mapping them to the vector, and the image will be wrapped around the base, will be wrapped around the mesh's UV and affect the base color. So now we open our images. So we're doing the dirt first. Albedo is the same as your specular map or diffuse map. Not specular map, sorry, diffuse map. So there it is. And I want to shrink it down a bit, so I'm going to go, instead of 1, I'm going to go 1.5 on the X and the Y axis, which just makes the texture a bit finer. I don't think Z does anything, but I'll put 1.5 in just in case I'm wrong. Okay, then we want the same mapping to be applied for the other maps. So we can do the same thing again. We can hit Control-T to add another map sequence, or we can duplicate these, whichever way we want to do it, but we just want the mapping to be the same. So like at the moment, because I've done a duplicate, the mapping's the same, but an even neater way to do it would be to just plug the mapping down like so, and then we just want to grab, so roughness, so the albedo or the diffuse map, the roughness map and the normal map are the important ones. So roughness, and lastly the normal. Just go into local rendered view here, so I've tapped / on my keyboard just to view this, so I'm sure that'll be fine. It's quite dark, the normal map seems to have made it quite dark, but the normal map does appear to be working. Anyway, I can tweak all that later. So the next thing is to move to the pond floor, do the same thing, Control-T, we want the, this time we want the mossy ground, to take the cube into edit mode, select, this top face, and then select the pond floor and assign the pond floor to this top face. So now you can see that the two materials, so the dirt's getting applied around here. I'm just going to take on the dirt layer and take that normal map off for now. There might be something going on with the normal map. I'll take a closer look at that later. Okay. So that should do. I'm just going to now, so back on the pond floor, shrink this down a fair bit. So I'm going to try 5. So nice and fine for the texture there. And then same thing, duplicate. This one will be the roughness map. This one will be the normal map. They all share the same mapping coordinates. We'll just change the files. So this is the roughness. This one is the normal. Okay, that's the main cube done. For a bit of variation, ultimately you'd probably want to damage this cube, make it add some dents and things to make it look a bit more realistic. For now I'm just going to add a bevel modifier to it to round the corners off a bit, increase the segments to about 3, just shrink the size down so it just gives it slightly rounded edges on the cube. This looks a little bit nicer to the eye than those harsh, sharp edges that we had before. Like I say, you can go a lot further with this and add some real dents and things. There is a good plugin called, can't remember what it's called, on Blender Market that instantly damages objects, which is good for this sort of thing. Okay, so now I can jump back out of my local view, so tapping / again brings me back and we're up to the water. So create a new material called water. And the main thing is with water, the transmission, which makes lets the light go through the object. So light through. So we bring the transmission up to 1. Sometimes you want to bring it back down later, but start with 1. And then roughness of 0. Water is not rough; it's very smooth. And then we want to match the IOR. So an IOR of 1. Kind of see here as it renders, there's no distortion happening. We're just getting the original cube, and we can see the other texture is there. I'll just go into cycle, probably, Eevee might be easier to see. Let's wait for it to load. So yeah, not really any distortion. Actually, no cycles is better. Sorry. But if we then start to lift this IOR, so let's go to say 1.1. Now you can see that the water surface is refracting the light, causing this distortion to happen. And then I just start with 1.333 for water and take it from there, go up and down. I don't know what the actual IOR of water is. I think it's somewhere close to that. But you can see we're getting some nice water effects now. And then the last thing is, so the raindrops are going to give us our larger ripples, but water tends to have a lot of micro ripples on the surface, and that's where we can create some micro ripples by adjusting the normal map here. But this time, instead of an image, we'll use a procedural normal map. So we're going to we're going to add a bump node. So a bump node, you could use it to enhance or adjust an existing normal map, but you can also, we can use this height slot here. So a normal map, a bump node, will take height information and convert it into a bump map for us. Where are we going to get this height information? We're going to use a noise texture. and we want the factor to go into the height. Notice that these are colour coordinated, so yellow goes to yellow, grey means it'll accept all sorts of things, blue goes to blue. Yeah, just something to keep in mind. And straight away, it takes a while to render, but you'll see that the water surface now has got some micro ripples in it. Changing the detail will increase the swells in the water, and then the scale will change the size of those micro ripples. I'll leave it for now. So all that's left to do is to apply that same water material to this rock, the part of the rock that mimics the water on top of the rock. Remember, we had the duplicate. We've got 2 copies of that, of this one, which is the rock, and this one, which is the water effect. And we want to do the same with this is our raindrop, so it uses the same water texture. And then for rendering purposes, we'll turn this off. We only want the particles to render. The original we can completely disable like so, I believe. And then for the particle emitter here, under the particle settings, we can, under both render and untick show emitter, and do the same for viewport display if you want to show emitter. So when I tick this, you'll see this emitter here disappears. We just get the particles, so it's close to what we want to see in our final render. And then take this to a timeline. So for now, let's just play it through. Jump back into this mode for now. Okay, so I can see the rain is falling through the cube, so we need to shorten the life of these particles so that the rain disappears before it leaks out the bottom of the cube. So if I go to my particle settings here, and then show the lifetime of the particles, let's try a lifetime of 20. That's much better. So they're still hitting the surface of the water, but then they're disappearing before we have to see them again. So that's about so. And then good idea to bake all the dynamics at this point. So we can just go to our physics tab and then down under cache, delete all bakes, and then bake all dynamics. That just means that the various dynamics that we've put in on the different objects should now all be baked to disk. Then we can, for a test render, I'll just do say 50 frames. Might actually start at frame 50 and end at frame 100. So I'm just going to render out these 50 frames as a test to see how it looks, and then we can tweak from there. So I'll pause the video now, render that animation out, and I'll be back. Just one thing I forgot to mention, under the render settings here, to do a test render, I'd want to be making sure, so there's the viewport settings and then the render settings. The render settings, what we're interested in. Make sure denoise is ticked and set a time limit for each frame. So what will happen is it'll render for this amount of seconds and then it'll apply the denoise. So I'd probably do 20 odd seconds if this was a final pass, but I might just do 10 seconds for this test render. So 10 seconds denoise, that means at least on my machine it'll take about 15 to 20 seconds per frame total to render these frames.